Hello, everybody. This is Shelley, McNamara and Yvonne Farrell from Grafton Architects. And we'd like to present our translation of a drawing by Pauo Mendes de Rocha, architect from Brazil. A drawing he made for a church called the Church of St. Peter in the grounds of the Palace of Boa Vista in a place called Campos do Jordão in Brazil. And this project was done in 1987. You're looking at the model, which was our translation of the drawing. And as you can see, it's a stone model. And the reason why we made it in stone was because of the clarity of thinking and because of the primal quality of this building. And it's interesting in the theme of alternative histories that it's a very provocative term. And the architects are asked to also imagine a future or an alternative future, which the project they have been assigned might have. And we find that a really interesting theme. First of all, the theme of alternative histories, and then the challenge within that to imagine its future. And in a way that makes us think about, or makes us connect a continuing search in our own work to find a connection between the archaic and the contemporary. And we often use a quote by Carl Jung, who talks about unconscious memory, that the collective unconscious memory is immensely old, but that it also reaches into what he calls an equally remote future. And what's fascinating about that is that it completely three-dimensionalizes a sense of space in a way, that it's not linear, that it's spiral, that it's infinite. The time is a kind of mystery which is not measurable, which this title in a way touches on, the title of the exhibition. In relation to the idea of making a church in the way that Pauo Mendes de Rocha has, it's called St. Peter's Church, so it's obviously Catholic. And we only realized after we had made the decision to make this in stone, we only realized afterwards that it also refers to Peter, the word Peter meaning rock, and that this sketch or this project comes out of the ancient practice of stacking rocks to form shelter. But it's not just secular. I think this project is relating to a time before institutionalized religion. It somehow reaches back to a more ancient time where there is, or was, and still is, the human drive to express or to find the sacred and the mysterious in life. And that's the role of architecture in many ways. Architecture is a kind of tool which is used to help us to try to comprehend the world. And looking at this model, you'll see three elements, which Yvonne will describe in more detail later. The L-shaped piece of stone is the ground, which is worked, and the upper piece of stone is existing ground, and the architect attaches the building to the existing ground and makes a little platform, which you can't see very well from this angle, but it's a stone floating platform which hovers over the ground. And then the third element is this big roof, which is like a kind of a tent or a tree. So it harks back to the archaic, but it's also incredibly contemporary in its use of structure, its use of architectural technique, let's say, its ability to make things float or appear to be floating. And so it has that combination which we hope responds to the question of alternative histories and how these projects that we've been asked to look at might reach into what Jung calls an equally remote future. Next image. The thing that's fascinating also about focusing on drawings in drawing matter is the drawing is the kind of hieroglyphic of the architect, and Yvonne always talks about a drawing capturing the DNA of a project, and people who are not architects describe these as scribbles, and rightly so, because it's impossible to know what they mean unless you know what's in the architect's head. And the drawing we focused on is the one on the bottom right. But we like this sheet because it has the text of the architect, and it also has a little plan at the top. And the project that the architect has done is the little free shape form on the bottom left of the plan. And as I mentioned earlier, it attaches itself to an existing retaining wall, and it's in the grounds of an existing palace. So it's like an annex to the palace grounds. But what's extraordinary about the work of Pauo Mendes de Rocha, which we witnessed at an exhibition of his work in the Triennale in Milan, where he had a series of these little drawings. You could say they're innocent, harmless little drawings. And then beside them were photographs of the projects that came out of them. These enormous, heroic, brave, challenging projects, which is the quality that Pauo Mendes de Rocha manages to achieve, which is one of intimacy and the sense of the heroic at the same time. And if we go to the next image. So the drawing seems to be extremely simple. And if we think about how we carry this work into a future, an alternative future, I would say that it touches a nerve in Grafton architects' kind of work or wish to be able to hit a chord with such precision in the way that this drawing begins the process of the making of what for us is a very timeless piece of architecture. And when I talk about it going back to kind of pre-institutionalized religion, that it does feel like you find a piece of rock which has a slope or a splay, and you prop it on something and you make it a floor. And then the intermediate level is a gallery. And then you get a big piece of rock like a dolmen or a standing stone, and you prop that and you make shelter and you make an extraordinary space. So that it also describes what the nature of the different kinds of drawings that different architects make. Some architects make incredibly beautiful, explicit drawings. This architect reveals very little in his sketches in some ways and reveals everything in another. And the distance between the sketch and the built artifact is driven by some inner energy embedded in this architect and in the drawing that you can't read from the drawing itself unless you maybe have another insight, which we don't have perhaps. So there is that thing of the status and the role of the drawing in the world of architecture. And if we go to the next image. So we had this idea of making this model in stone, and we worked with the sculptor Eileen McDonough. And it was simply because the clarity of three elements balanced and brought together, we felt would have a beautiful interpretation of the of the project of Pauo Mendes to Rocha. And by making the model together with the sculptor, we discovered what we call the balancing act of the structure. The big round little dowel is the central column. Everything rotates around it, but it's not symmetrical. The irregular shape of the floor makes it feel connected to the ground, but at the same time free of it. It's playful. It has this three-dimensional kind of space in itself, a bit like maybe the floor of Rocha, which slopes and has a beautiful quality in itself. And it's amazing to think that that this is for the ritual of Mass, the Catholic ritual of Mass, and the priest stands at the projecting tip. And we've seen photographs of this ritual, this ceremony, where the priest, dressed in all the traditional regalia, stands on this platform, apparently perfectly happy in the space, which embedded in it is the sense of ritual, but somehow it also feels quite stripped of the things that one might normally associate with the ritual of Mass. And it's very much to do with, again, Pauo Mendes de Rocha's obsession with no boundaries, with somehow the placing of man in the context of the big horizon. That somehow that man or woman or us as human beings, when we stand or we sit, that we're somehow placed in the context of the world. Again, this idea that architecture helps us to understand or place ourselves in the world. And of course, within the idea of religion, the horizon is where the sky and the ground meet, a very important energy line in our perception of the world. Next image. And our drawing of in trying to translate the plan of this project, we felt that it was made of contour lines in the way that the ground is made, that it's not like an architectural plan in many ways, that it's like a little hillock or a piece of territory you might come across, and you try to map the different layers. And these layers build up, culminating on the roof. And real ground feels really embedded. Floating ground and floating roof, these are the components which make up the project. Next image. And these were our drawings of the structure. And again, not only is it extremely clear and liberating to think of making a project simply out of three elements, there's also an asymmetry involved. So the column is in the middle in terms of the way the forces of gravity are controlled, but it's not in the center in a symmetrical plan. So the asymmetry is a real test and challenge in terms of the control of structure. But there's something wonderful about that as well, that it's balanced. The forces of gravity are controlled, directed, but at the same time, it feels free. So you see the depth of the roof, the depth of the floor, and then the ground below. The next image. And so this thing of two floating plans hovering over the ground, the floating plan being the roof and the floor of the church, and the big fat foundation in the ground, which stabilizes this. And when we talk about the balancing act, what we found was that the sculptor, Eileen McDonough, found that she didn't have to worry about these pieces being propped. It had a natural sense of balance. So there's an inherent understanding of engineering and the techniques of architecture. And at the same time, there's a liberation from the restrictions of these challenges, let's say. And just to go back to the alternative histories theme and the thing of alternative future for this work. Mendes de Rocha himself says we're always the same human being, but always and again in another time. And that each work is a discourse, and therein the idea of a contemplative glance to the past upon which the new is built. And the contemplative glance to the past makes it sound like it's by the by, that it's not serious. But again, it's something that's a bit like the way that musicians or poets talk about being able to absorb a tradition into yourself or into your work, that you become a channel for something. T.S. Eliot speaks very beautifully about this. So I think Pauo Mendes de Rocha's contemplative glance to the past it's a glance because it's somehow embedded in the way that he views the world, and it's embedded in the way that he approaches architecture. And for us, that has huge potential for as a resource to think about how we progress into the future. And Yvonne is going to continue now with the next part of the discussion.
Hello, Yvonne Farrell here. And when Shell describes the Pauo Mendes de Rocha sketch, it is that issue of hieroglyphics and what we call kind of diagrams of intent. And each of the architect's drawings or sketches are really searching for a hidden code to hold a new world together. And just in the section that I'm going to talk about now, it's not really from the sketch to the building, it's really from the building back to the sketch. And our opportunity in making this model that's in the exhibition is really delving from the power of the sketch of reality, looking at the reality, and then, if you like, explaining it in a different medium. And what is extraordinary, I suppose, is that the architectural sketch is about speculation. It's about finding measure, representing people's dreams, and finding a synthesis of forms, a form that would encapsulate a cultural phenomenon, in this case, a chapel. And we sometimes say that architecture is a silent language that speaks. And it's about a choreography of spaces that's experienced. There's a lovely quote from Lina Bobardi, and she says, "Until a person enters a building, climbs its steps, and seizes the space in a human adventure that unfolds in time, architecture does not exist." So in the absence of us all being in South America and entering this building, what is amazing here is that you're arriving on the upper level. You have this transparency, you have the roof, and you have the clouds. And this is a beautiful image from the book by Annette Spiro on Mendes, a very important book by Annette Spiro on Mendes de Rocha's work. And the issue of heavy and light and transparency and this free, this canopy, this kind of, this next image also from Annette Spiro's book. What is extraordinary in this image is that there is the weight of the roof, there is the platform, and then there's this glass screen, which is like those kind of bubbles that as a child you blow, and they have this ephemeral quality that they're going to vanish in any minute. And there's a kind of an illusion of not there-ness. And as Shelley has described, the Peter from Matthew in the New Testament. In the New Testament, Peter, thou art the rock, and upon this rock I will build my church. And just what is amazing about this sense of the rock, that the concrete is, if you like, is translating that idea into space. And that what we have presented to you in the exhibition is that we have translated this concrete conceptual idea from Mendes de Rocha into limestone, into rock. There's a kind of an irony there. But just in terms of the congregation, what I find amazing about this this tongue of space that comes out in this image, that you have the congregation that's held on this hand. I mean, the symbolism of being held within the space, as Shelley's saying, between ground and sky, being both on display and also held in the kind of metaphorical space between, you know, buried in the earth and the relationship to kind of to the ether. It's incredibly symbolic. It on the left-hand side, what I find amazing about the contrast between the heaviness of the concrete and then the lightness and simplicity of other elements. There are other elements we won't talk about today, but in terms of the simplicity and lightness of staircases and handrails and the undercroft, the way reflection and twinning. So this is our drawing, working with the fantastic sculptor Eileen McDonough in translating the sketch into a new reality, into something which is handable, made of limestone. So my first image was as arriving a drawing for the making of the model. You're arriving on the upper part. You're seeing the column that Shelley described that holds the building together, and this a floating platform of the roof. And then in section, what is amazing is that the existing ground is continued, and this hand, it's like a diving board that actually brings the congregation to a point where Shell has described the priest in his vestments standing in this position, but also that the glass, the way what I find amazing about our research into this building is that from sketch to reality, nothing seems to be lost, that this great architect is able to conceptualize in an incredibly simple drawing that Shell has shown you of the various planes, but that is actually translated into space. It's actually what you experience. So it's not a drawing for its own sake. It's an architectural drawing that holds space in a very particular way, and it's achieved then by the detailing, by the making. So you have the plan where you come from real ground, you move out onto this stepped diving board. It's held by this incredibly strong structure, this circular structure in the center. And working with Eileen McDonough, this is her first study in foam. This is it's very interesting to compare the materiality of this. Is really judging relationships, judging scale, but also how different the impact of material from sketch to building and back, from foam and now onto limestone. So here are if you like, the four elements of it. On the left-hand side, you have the lower part, which is real ground carved down. And then a beautiful interpretation of the reflective water below, which is a finely polished limestone to give the reflection. Then you have the column, which Shelley has talked about in terms of structure. The continuation, if you like, or manicured land as it becomes a type of peninsula that projects beyond the real land, hovers over the reflection below. And then in terms of the roof, in terms of if you look at the actual drawings, I mean, this is a concrete structure, but by Eileen McDonough's plate, this kind of a portal dolmen roof on this sandwich. It's kind of a sandwich of space between ground and sky. And what we love about this image to share with you is that here is this Amazon. She is an incredible sculptor. So you've got your ear protections, her gloves, her paraphernalia of how you make this. So you have this piece of limestone cut. You have the polished limestone representing very successfully the reflective quality of the water. And you see the column being doubled in the reflection down below here. Then you have the modification of real land as you come out on this diving board for the community. And then this cordroy, this human hand carving into the stone as a metaphor for real land, the retaining wall and the dropping down. And what is very beautiful about this image and Shelley was quoting recently, I think it was Fulvio Orace talking about that architecture is kind of a series of additive imperfections, and that what I love about this kind of work in progress image is that you see the sculptor carving into the material. You see the crisscross of her energy modifying the stone. You see the change between the materials, and then by polishing the limestone, you see the actual elements that make up this incredible material of limestone being revealed in a different way. And here, in terms of the roof, the kind of capital of the Portal Dolmen, this corduroy technique applied to that. So the roof is really, even though in reality, it's not a solid, it is a concrete series of kind of upturned beams to form the depth and thickness of it. It's represented here in terms of the heaviness of the stone. And here we have again, which is really beautiful. I think that, you know, the remnants of the pencil mark of the sculpture as she carves this piece. You have this sense. I think what is important for us in sharing this with this exhibition or being part of this exhibition is that there's the power of the sketch, there's the power of the building, and then there's it's us in contemporary life looking at this building and going back into it and going back into the sketch. So here we have, if you like, a stone, carved stone representing the main architectural elements. So the glass is not represented because in fact its sense of the view beyond allows you to think of the glass as not being there. So just to say that we wish the exhibition really well. The power of the drawing within architecture, it really is about speculation and about finding the measure and finding the expression. But what seems to be amazing in Mendes de Rocha's gift as an architect is the ability to condense everything in what appears to be the most simple of drawings, but holds an architectural space which is confirmed. It's like an equation. It's like something from Einstein, E equals mc squared, which I don't understand, but know the, if you like, the equation. Mendes de Rocha's sketch is an equation. It's a challenge to architecture to make it in reality. And for us, in this case, and in many other pieces of his work, he takes the simplicity of the drawing. It is translated into a reality that supports all the intentions of his architectural ambition. And in our model here, what we're doing is taking the rock, modifying the rock, and trying to explain in detail what the main elements, the spatial elements and symbolic elements of this project are. So we hope you enjoy our piece of research, and we wish the exhibition all the very best. Thank you.